Her trash cans disappeared overnight, only to reappear in front of her neighbor Karen's house, boldly labeled with Melissa's house number. Karen, smug and unapologetic, denied everything, turning the blame on Melissa. But Melissa had a secret weapon, her security camera, which captured Karen's brazen theft. What happened next? Let's just say justice came rolling back in a way no one expected. It was one of those crisp Thursday mornings when the neighborhood felt almost serene. Melissa Carter, a meticulous and thoughtful woman in her mid-30s, stepped out of her house, the gentle chill of the air brushing her cheeks. Her routine was set like clockwork: drag the bins to the curb, make a mental note of her to-do list for the day, and head back inside. But this morning was different. She froze mid-step. The spot by the side of her house, where her recycling and garbage bins always stood, was empty. At first, her mind raced through mundane possibilities. Did she forget to bring them back after last week's pickup? No, that couldn't be it. She always brought them in the same day. Maybe the city workers mistakenly took them. That didn't make sense either. And then a bizarre thought crept in. Theft. But who steals trash cans? Melissa shook her head as if trying to push away the absurdity of it all. She scanned her quiet street, her eyes darting from driveway to driveway, looking for any sign of the missing bins. And then she saw them. At first, she blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her, but no, there they were, her bins. Sitting neatly at the curb of her neighbor's house, just across the street. Bold as brass, as though they had always belonged there. Her brow furrowed as a wave of disbelief washed over her. Melissa was the kind of person who valued order and details. It's why she had taken the time to label her bins with large, permanent decals. 318 in clear, bold font. There was no mistaking it. These were her bins. Her heartbeat quickened as she crossed the street, her sneakers crunching softly against the pavement. She approached the bins, her eyes narrowing in on the telltale decals she had so painstakingly affixed. And there it was, her handwriting, her bins. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. Before she could gather her thoughts, the sound of a door opening drew her attention. Karen Thornton stepped out onto her porch. Karen, her neighbor. The same Karen who had once complained that Melissa's wind chimes were too loud on breezy days. The same Karen who always seemed to park just a little too close to Melissa's driveway. Karen, who now stood before her with a smug look plastered across her face. "Oh, good morning, Melissa," Karen chirped, her tone sugary sweet and utterly disingenuous. She raised a hand to shield her eyes from the sun. "Lovely day, isn't it?" Melissa stared at her, stunned by the sheer audacity. Pointing directly at the bins, she took a steadying breath before speaking. "Karen, these are my bins. Why are they in front of your house?" Karen's expression didn't waver. In fact, it seemed to harden, her lips curling into a smirk that sent a jolt of irritation through Melissa. "Oh no, sweetie," Karen said with a tone that dripped condescension. "These are mine. I've had them for months." Melissa's stomach dropped. She had walked over here expecting an awkward misunderstanding, maybe even a neighborly laugh about the mix-up. Instead, she was met with a brick wall of denial. Her bins had been stolen, and now, to make matters worse, she was being gaslit by the very person who took them. Her voice came out in a low, shaky breath. "Karen, they're labeled. They literally say 318. That's my house number." Karen shrugged, her smile not budging. "I have no idea how that number got there, but I'm telling you, these are my bins. If you're so sure they're yours, maybe you should keep better track of your things." Melissa could feel her blood beginning to boil. This wasn't just about trash cans anymore. It was about principle. But as she stood there, staring at Karen's smug face, she realized she wasn't going to win this battle. Not yet. Karen had already made it clear she wasn't backing down. "Unbelievable," Melissa muttered again, louder this time, before turning on her heel and walking back to her house. Her hands were clenched into fists, her mind racing with indignation. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Melissa spent the rest of the day fuming, her thoughts spinning in a storm of disbelief and outrage. How could Karen, of all people, pull such a petty, ridiculous stunt? It wasn't just about the trash cans anymore. It was about something bigger, principle, dignity, and the sheer audacity of it all. As she paced back and forth in her kitchen, her mind wandered back to every sour interaction she'd ever had with Karen, and there were plenty. There was the time Karen had knocked on her door, a clipboard in hand, to complain about Melissa's garden. "Your hedges are overgrown," Karen had declared, her tone as sharp as the pruning shears Melissa hadn't even used that season. "They're ruining the aesthetic of the neighborhood." Tentato. Never mind that Karen's own yard looked like something out of a horror movie, patchy grass and plastic flamingos that had seen better days. Then there were the accusations about her cat, Leo. Karen had confronted her in broad daylight, gesturing wildly at her car. "Your cat walked all over my hood. I saw the paw prints." Melissa had tried to explain, calmly at first, that Leo was an indoor cat who hadn't stepped outside in years, but Karen wouldn't hear it. "Those prints didn't come from nowhere," she'd insisted, glaring at Melissa, as if she were harboring a criminal. And who could forget the driveway incident? Karen had parked her SUV just far enough into Melissa's driveway to make it impossible for her to back out. When Melissa knocked on her door to ask her to move the car, Karen had feigned surprise. "Oh, was I blocking you? I had no idea. Let me grab my keys." Melissa remembered how Karen's lips had twitched into a small, almost imperceptible smile as she strolled back inside, taking her sweet time. These memories swirled in Melissa's mind like a tidal wave of resentment, fueling her frustration. This wasn't just about trash cans anymore. This was a pattern, a series of deliberate acts designed to assert dominance. And Melissa had had enough. By the time the evening rolled around, her anger had crystallized into determination. She wasn't going to let Karen get away with this, not this time. She grabbed her phone, slipped on her shoes, and marched across the street, her steps purposeful and her jaw set. Standing on Karen's porch, Melissa didn't hesitate. She knocked firmly, the sound echoing in the quiet evening air. The door creaked open, and there she was, Karen, wearing the same smug expression she had that morning. "Oh, Melissa," she said, her voice honeyed with fake politeness. "What a surprise! What can I do for you?" Melissa didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Karen, those are my trash cans. They're labeled. You know they're mine. I want them back." Karen's smile faltered for a moment before she recovered, crossing her arms over her chest. "I don't know what you're trying to prove here," she snapped, her tone laced with condescension. "But if you can't keep track of your belongings, maybe you shouldn't have them." The sheer gall of the statement hit Melissa like a slap to the face. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides as she fought to keep her composure. The nerve of this woman, stealing her property, lying about it, and then turning the blame on her. It was infuriating. Words swirled in her mind, things she wanted to say, but she bit her tongue. She knew Karen wouldn't listen. She wasn't just stubborn. She thrived on control, on pushing people to the brink and watching them squirm. Melissa stared at Karen for a long moment, her chest tight with frustration. She wanted to scream, to yell, to do anything that would wipe that smug look off Karen's face. But she knew it would be pointless. Karen would twist her words, spin the narrative, and make Melissa out to be the unreasonable one. Without another word, Melissa turned and walked away, her shoulders stiff and her mind racing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Melissa sat in her kitchen that evening, her frustration simmering just beneath the surface. She replayed Karen's smug words in her head, each one like a match striking her temper. There had to be a way to prove the truth, to wipe that condescending smirk off Karen's face once and for all. Then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit her, the security camera. Months ago, after a package went missing from her porch, Melissa had installed a small, discreet security camera aimed at her driveway and yard. She never actually had to use it, and the idea of checking it now filled her with nervous anticipation. She grabbed her laptop, plugged in the camera's memory card, and began scrolling through the footage from the previous night. Her heart raced as the video loaded. The grainy image showed her quiet yard, her trash cans standing obediently by the side of her house. Melissa fast-forwarded the footage, her eyes glued to the screen. And then she saw it. At 9:43 p.m., Karen appeared in the frame, casually strolling into Melissa's yard as if she owned the place. Without hesitation, Karen grabbed the trash cans, both of them, and dragged them across the street to her house. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. Karen didn't even bother to look around or check if anyone was watching. She moved with the confidence of someone who believed they were untouchable. Melissa's jaw dropped as she watched the scene unfold. It wasn't just theft. It was the brazen nonchalance of it all. Karen had acted like this was her right, like Melissa's property was hers for the taking. By the time the footage ended, Melissa's shock had turned into a steely resolve. This was it, the proof she needed. She felt a surge of satisfaction as she transferred the video to her phone, replaying it once more to savor the sweet justice she was about to deliver. The next morning, Melissa was up early, her phone gripped tightly in her hand as she crossed the street to Karen's house. Her steps were deliberate, her confidence buoyed by the undeniable evidence in her pocket. When she reached Karen's porch, she knocked firmly, the sound reverberating through the crisp morning air. Karen opened the door, her usual smug expression firmly in place. "Melissa," she said with feigned politeness, "what can I do for you today?" Melissa didn't waste a second. "You might want to take a look at this," she said, her voice calm but laced with unmistakable determination. She held up her phone, tapping the screen to play the video. Karen's smile faltered the moment she saw herself on the screen. The color drained from her face as the footage showed her dragging the bins across the street with casual ease. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out. Melissa watched the cracks form in Karen's facade, the silence stretching between them heavy with tension. "You're unbelievable," Melissa snapped, breaking the quiet. Her voice was sharp, each word cutting like a blade. "You lied, Karen, to my face. Over trash cans. Do you have any idea how pathetic that is?" Karen stammered, her hands wringing nervously. I didn't. There must be some misunderstanding." But Melissa wasn't in the mood for excuses. She cut Karen off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Save it. Here's the deal. You're going to put my bins back where they belong, today, or I'm sending this to the HOA, and believe me, the whole neighborhood will know what you did." The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Karen's face twisted, as if she were about to argue, but she seemed to think better of it. She knew she'd been caught red-handed, and there was no spinning her way out of this one. Without another word, Melissa turned and walked back to her house, her steps lighter now, a sense of victory settling over her. By the end of the day, her trash cans were back in their rightful place, and Karen hadn't so much as glanced in her direction since. Justice had been served. By the end of the day, Melissa's trash cans were back where they belonged, but she didn't stop there. That evening, she posted the security footage in the neighborhood group chat, captioned, "Some people will literally steal anything. Be vigilant." The chat exploded. Neighbors shared similar stories of Karen's behavior, false accusations, property disputes, and general rudeness. Realizing she wasn't alone, Melissa decided to take action. At the next HOA meeting, backed by her neighbors, she proposed stricter rules about respecting property lines and resolving disputes. The motion passed unanimously, with Karen sitting silently in the back, her once bold confidence replaced by awkward discomfort. From then on, Karen avoided Melissa entirely, her usual smugness gone. As Melissa rolled her bins out the following week, she smiled, knowing she'd not only reclaimed her trash cans but also her dignity and strengthened her community in the process.